Commercial Construction Coffee Talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction Renovation magazine. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. It's Thanksgiving week here in the States. For those of you that are already getting ready to gobble on Thursday, safe travels out there. Even with the high gas prices and inflation and all that stuff, listen, enjoy your time with family and friends, and do everybody a favor. Don't bring up any politics, okay? Don't talk politics. Just talk about good stuff, all right? Save it. It's not worth talking about anyway. Forget about it. You can't do anything about it anyway. So that's my theme for tonight. Have fun with Thanksgiving, eat mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, but don't talk politics. Actually, it's almost time. Braves won, the World Series, so we're still on the high here in Atlanta. They had the parade, and they're moving the trophy around, and I think the Braves are going down to do a thing on Thanksgiving. So good for them downtown. The Georgia Bulldogs, #1 in the country. Got the SEC championship coming up in a couple weekends from now against the Alabama Crimson Tide. So that's going to be a huge gig here in Georgia. We've got Georgia Tech this weekend, and then we got Alabama the following weekend. So big games coming up. And of course, the Falcons are stinking it up. They got blown out the last 2 weekends. So they're the ugly birds. They call them the dirty birds. I call them the ugly birds because they just looking really ugly. But actually, believe it or not, everybody in the division lost, so they still have a chance to get in. But they got to win some games. You got to win to get in. So with that said, we're talking. My guest tonight is actually down under in the awesome country of Australia. Her name is Ryll Burgin-Doyle. She's an entrepreneur, author, jack of all trades, and she's in construction too. So Ryll, you're in Brisbane, correct?
Brisbane, yes.
Brisbane, sorry. And this mate wants to say hello to our Commercial Construction Coffee Talk fans out there on the web.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, David.
Oh, no, we appreciate it. And the reason why we had Ryll on was because most of the time I've had a person from Europe, we've had someone from Israel, most of the people are from the States, but the reason why I had Ryll on, first of all, she's in construction. Second of all, she can give us a good vibe on what's going down in Australia, and from a construction point of view and how they dealt with the pandemic and how they're coming out of it. And Australia is kind of like the United States. Ohio is completely different than Florida, and Florida is completely different than California. And whether you're in Melbourne, Sydney, or Brisbane, they're all different types of demographics and cities, and they got all sorts of different rules and regulations. So once again, construction can get affected. So that's why we actually had Ryll on. And so Ryll, here's the gig. You got to tell your story. Tell us, where you grew up, if you have any brothers and sisters, where you went to school, and how you actually ended up here. And then we'll talk about Australia, business and construction, and then we'll finish it off. So the floor is yours. Tell us your story. Very good.
Well, thank you again for having me. It's great to be here. And in terms of my story, I started my first business when I was about 22 years old. And I've loved business. Fundamentally, I've been growing my own or other people's businesses for the last 30 years. This year's my 30th anniversary.
Congrats.
I did grow up with an entrepreneurial mum. So my mother started her first business when I was 3. And so I literally grew up waiting for her to finish in the various businesses she had over time. And I think it was just in my blood then. And so, I started my first business very young with $1,100 to my name and no clue really, just a passion for business. And really, I think back now and go, God, I had absolutely no right to be in that business. But because I was very young, I'd never owned a business of my own, and yet that business was a strategic advisory firm where we would help people put together business plans for their businesses. Most of my clients were men 2 and 3 times my age. So the odds of me being successful in that were pretty slim. But what actually worked for me, and this is for those who are listening who are younger than my generation, this was pre the internet. So, you know, no LinkedIn, no way to access people like that. So started that business with $1,100 to my name, grew it very, very successfully, mostly because of my naivety. I think my ego didn't get in the way. So if I read something or a mentor said, do it this way, I was just like, okay, great, I'm going to do it that way. And it actually really worked for me because I didn't have any argument for why those strategies wouldn't work. So actually that worked massively in my favor. We grew from 0 clients to about 400 active clients. We became the largest provider of business planning in our state, and really led that charge. And I sold that business successfully for 6 figures at the 3.5-year mark, which for a 27-year-old was a big deal, starting with $1,100 and selling it for 6 figures. 3 years later was pretty cool, 3.5 years later. And then I moved to the States. And actually, you mentioned Ohio and Florida. I got to live in San Fran, in New York, and in Columbus, Ohio, and in Orlando, Florida, during my time in the US, and absolutely loved it. But they're like 4 different countries, really.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and so what I was doing when I moved to the US, I became a published author on marketing management strategies for small to medium-sized enterprises. That 2,000 pages of knowledge base that's still delivered through accounting firms today. And then I made the shift to much bigger business, billion-dollar companies, $400 million companies, and the dot-com boom. And really figured out the big companies are just like little companies, just with more zeros, more politics, and more complacency in many cases. So
More red tape.
More red tape, lots of that. But I had an absolute great time in the US. I love the US. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. My favorite holiday of the year. I used to actually make everyone here do Thanksgiving. When I came home, I was like, you have to have Thanksgiving. It's the best holiday of the whole year. But anyway, so yeah, so I literally cut my teeth growing other people's businesses, grew my own in the process, then moved to the States, started working on growth, being a brand strategist and growth strategist for very large companies. And really that's been my whole 30 years in business, has been about growth. And it's the thing I love the most. Obviously along the way, as you said, I got into construction. I ended up becoming the CEO of a $100 million construction company here in Australia, with 200 people and about 8 different entities, all doing different parts of the construction process. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. I grew up with my parents renovating and building houses my whole life. I lived in 17 houses as a child. So,
oh, wow.
You know, we were not one of these families that had one house forever. I think the longest I ever stayed in one house was 5 years. So you can imagine those other 17, the 16 others happened pretty quickly. Sure. So I think I did love that process, and I love seeing something come out of the ground. So for me, construction is great fun. It's incredible. I'm now currently CEO and part owner of we'll do a 25 million this year, and on track to do about 50 million in the next couple of years. So got a brilliant team in that business and love it to death. So I really do enjoy the construction side of things, and that's probably about it. Background wise, I've fundamentally been growing every kind of business imaginable, and found a little niche in construction that I absolutely love. And here I am. So
you know, Thanksgiving's like a construction project. You work all day to get a dinner that takes about 10 minutes to eat, and then you got to clean it up like a facility maintenance company, you know. I mean, that's the way it works, you know. It's you know, you get up at the crack of dawn, you get everything prepared, you stick it in the oven, you got to get the table done, everybody comes in, you got all this stuff going on, then all of a sudden you eat, it takes 10 minutes. Yeah. And you got to clean up. You know, it's kind of like a construction project, you know. Yeah. If you're not playing right, hey, it might not go right, you know.
That's right. Yeah, you got to
defrost the turkey, or you know, you don't have the pumpkin, or you didn't get enough butter, or you know, it's you know, all those things on the project budget list, you know. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I should say the other thing that I have a significant hand in is we have about 3 different tech businesses, one of which is in the property development and construction space, and others are in different sectors than that. But yeah, I love the space, love tech, love construction, love growing businesses fundamentally. So yeah, that's probably the story. There's probably enough of my story, David. Let's talk.
Yeah,
Whatever you want to talk about.
well, let's talk. Let's listen. You know, you were in Australia. I mean, it didn't matter where you were in the world. But, you know, 21 came in January, February. Here in the States, cranes are up, low unemployment. You know, couldn't find people to work because everybody had a job. I mean, we were booming here in the States. COVID comes in the middle of March. Everything gets shut down. Okay, shut down for 2 weeks to a month. We'll figure things out. And they kept going. Now here we are 18 months later. You know, you got all the political BS that's going on, you know, with the mandates, this and that, and the different states, depending on what state you're in, you know, with regulations. Also, if you were an essential business or if you weren't. I mean, all of these things. But through it all, you know, here in the States, a lot of companies had to become more flexible. They learned that they could let their people work at home. They learned how to use technology like we're using right now. You know, all the safety protocols had to go on, all the liability issues that, you know, that weren't in there pre-COVID, that were in there during COVID or post-COVID, call it what you want. As far as Australia went, how did that go down there? I mean, as far as life was going on just like any life here, and then all of a sudden, you know, you get hit by a 2x4 with rusty nails, and you're kind of going, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? You know?
Yeah, exactly. So what you described is pretty much exactly what has happened here. So March 2020, everything froze. Construction was actually came out of it pretty well, because there was really only Melbourne. So Melbourne, Victoria, Melbourne's the city, Victoria's the state. It is now unfortunately got the title of being the most locked down city in the world. The government there, the equivalent of your governor, the premier, we call them the premier, has had a particular approach. I think their longest stretch of lockdown was 7 months.
Oh, wow.
So when
you say lockdown, I mean lockdown, right?
Lockdown, can't leave your house for essential goods only, no school, all the kids are on online school, just nothing. And in that government shut down construction, whereas the rest of the country did not do that. They did not shut down construction until the last round of lockdowns, which just happened in the last few months in New South Wales and Sydney, because Sydney went crazy with Delta. So the government in New South Wales closed down the construction industry in Sydney for a short period of time, and then they were allowed to work depending on, you could only be at 50% capacity at any time, social distancing, all of that had to be, but that was the first time in New South Wales, for example, which is a very large state, that construction had been so massively impacted. And I work with, not only do I have one business I'm CEO of and part owner of, there are other people in construction that I work with to work on growing their businesses. So I've got one client that's a $100 million construction company. We're growing them to about the next couple of years, they'll be 349 or so million. Another company was doing about 20 million by the time, because of the strategic plan I've done for them, they're going to hit about 149 this year, and they both going to have that growth despite having been shut down for a whole quarter. So they're fundamentally shut down for a quarter, minimal ability to claim, and they've only just gone back into offices and onto sites in normal capacity, subject to vaccines and all of that stuff at the minute. So construction was actually pretty good, considering, because it was considered an essential it had to keep going. Obviously, the impact on the economy of construction slowing down is massive. So all the governments pretty much tried to avoid it, except, as I said, Melbourne, and then recently Sydney had no choice really, given what they were dealing with there. So, but Brisbane, on the other hand, Brisbane currently, so where I live, Brisbane has the most cranes up than any other city on the planet. Development is going nuts here. There's a huge casino and retail centre being built in the heart of the city. So there's this whole revitalisation or expansion really of the city to include that. There's just an enormous amount of development. And the other thing that's happening is, because of COVID, our state in particular, people are they're buying property up here like crazy, because we didn't do the lockdowns. We did a couple of snap lockdowns, and the original one that everybody had for 6 or 7 weeks, we did that. And then but that was kind of, that first one, as much as it was impactful, I've got one other business that by the time we start next March will have been shut down for 2 full years. Oh, wow. In one of our other businesses, which is a live events business. So as much as it was tough for everybody, at the same time, that first little window of COVID was almost like a moment in time where you suddenly had all your kids at home. There's kind of this family time. As much as it was frightening and nobody knew what was happening, you were kind of cocooned. And then, so that first one we had, in a weird way, for a lot of people was a bit of family respite. Actually, people talk about it as, oh my God, that was beautiful, that was amazing, because we finally got to stop and be with our families, as much as it was stressful. But then in Queensland, we've only had a couple of other snap lockdowns. We've been very, very, touch wood, very lucky here. So people are buying property. Property prices in Australia have gone up by 20 to 30%. We call it COVID cash. And in particular in Queensland, people have been buying property sight unseen over the internet, just to have a place that's out of the cities, out of the major cities, and out of the states, specifically out of Victoria. That state has taken a massive beating. People are leaving in droves. Sydney also, given the lockdowns that they went through, people wanted to have an alternate. So you're seeing people buy property in regional areas, either in their own state or in Queensland, because Queensland is the kind of place that people want to retire to. It's a little bit like Florida, beaches. Sure. You know, it's a place all the wealthy Victorians and people from Sydney come up here for winter holidays to get away from winter. It's that kind of place. So it's kind of where people want to end up. So I think people, either they're buying in regional cities or they're buying up here. And so the other thing that happened in construction is that home renovations went nuts. Everybody went, right, we're not traveling overseas, we're not spending 20 grand to go to Europe. Great, we're going to do something at home. So home renos have gone through the roof. And of course, the federal government put in some grants and bonuses and tried to accelerate that, which people took advantage of. And we had a pool put in the middle of COVID, and the pool builder said it's the busiest time they've had in 20 years.
Oh, wow. Because
everyone's like, well, we're not going to spend any money traveling, because Australians love to travel. We travel overseas a lot. We don't have the issue of thinking it's far away. We know where we are. We just get on a plane and go. So whereas you guys think it's miles, oh my God, 13 hours on a plane, what are you talking about? We're like, that's nothing. It's fun. You watch 3 movies, you have a few wines, you're there.
Yeah, sure. So what's the population of Australia?
25 million.
Okay, so
basically we're just a little bit smaller than California.
Okay, so Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, what are the populations there, just as an idea? To
I think, well, Sydney's about 5 million from memory. And Sydney, Melbourne, actually I have to probably look it up. They have been competing for years. So Melbourne was actually going to take over. Let me just check Sydney population for you. I think I know, but I think it's about 5 million. And then, 5.3. And then Melbourne is about 4. Oh no, that's what I meant. It's gone up to 5. That Melbourne was chasing Sydney. So Melbourne's about 5, Sydney's just over 5, and then Brisbane's the smaller. And then we've got Perth and Adelaide and a couple of other cities. So But Brisbane would be 2.5, 2.6.
Yeah.
So basically the East Coast is where the majority of the population lives, and then there's Perth and South Australia, Adelaide and South Australia, and obviously some other cities. But so Brisbane's growing. It's gone back to growth rates of about 1,000 people moving here a week.
Oh wow.
Which is pretty significant. So construction ultimately has come out pretty well. Now the company I'm CEO of, actually how that happened was the founder came to me during COVID and said, look, I've got to come up with a plan. I really want the big picture. I can't just deal with this short-term stuff. And we came up with a plan for the next decade for him. But what had happened was they were doing very well in the 20 millions plus. For the size of firm it is, they do an amazing job. Healthy, all of that. COVID hit, dropped to 7 million like that. So we do retail, luxury retail fit out. So of course all the luxury brands went, hang on a minute, whoa, what's going on with retail? What's going to happen with this thing? Let's pause all our contracts. So they literally just cut. So then we came up with a strategy to split the business into, actually the founder had done that just before I met him, split the business into 3 divisions: maintenance, joinery and fit out, and then focus on growing each of those 3. And we had a goal to get back to 11 million. We got back to 13 million and profitable just in that, coming off the back of COVID. So this last financial year went from 20 something to 7, and then we pushed it back up to 13, and then this year we'll do 25 again, and then onwards from there. So definitely rough for lots of different companies, but fundamentally construction kind of had a blip or different blips at different times depending on which state you're in. But growth fundamentally continued here, and the place is booming. Like you said, the problem I have in most of the companies that I work with in the construction sector is you can't find good PM, you can't find good project managers, you can't find development managers, you can't, like, people are, they're done, they're settled. The finding great people is probably the biggest challenge. And of course the other thing is supply chain issues. So the delays to timber coming into the country, significant. We've got mill work for one of our projects. It'll be 6 months. By the time it gets here, it will have been 6 months to get it here. So it's the supply chain issues are a challenge. And also you mentioned inflation. There's no talk of inflation here, but it is happening. It's happening in one of our companies rents hotel rooms for live events. Well, it used to cost $5,000 a day to do that. Now it costs $8,000. Same room, same hotel, same menu, same budget, same everything. It's $3,000 more than it was at March 2020 for no good reason. Nothing, no reason for it.
No, I'm flying to Phoenix next week. My ticket was normally the Phoenix to Atlanta round trip, 30 days out. I booked my ticket. Normally $350. I'm paying for something to fly out there. So granted, there aren't as many planes in the air as but still, it's my car was more expensive. My hotel room was more expensive. I'm staying at. Even the restaurants, when I was trying to normally I'm doing a reception next week in Scottsdale, northern Phoenix. Probably 125 people I would get. I have no idea how many people. There's a conference out there, it normally gets 1,500 people. They only have about 800, so they're about 50%. So when I was talking to the restaurant to book it, I was like, look, I don't know how many people are going to show up because I have a track record pre-COVID, but I don't have one, post-COVID. So I have no idea. I'm going to give you an F&B count, so because I know you're not going to cook the food 2 weeks before. Order the food and a day or two before, make sure we have our wings or quesadillas or whatever. But exactly. But it was amazing. A lot of these people, they put these minimums on. We're like, you guys got hammered the last year. You would think that if you don't have anybody there, why would you nickel and dime me? You would just say, hey man, we'd love to have you. I didn't get it. But,
I think it's the staff ratios and all that stuff is a nightmare. But Yeah, it's definitely happening here. So I'd say construction, the challenges are finding good people. There's plenty of work. There's work everywhere. There's work out the yin yang. Development's going crazy. Large scale developments, small scale developments, it's happening everywhere. Retail, luxury retail. I mean, who would have thought that in the middle of COVID, like I literally a couple of months ago, drove past one of the stores we built for a major brand, and the queue out the door, like literally a queue out the door around the corner to buy luxury items, handbags, luggage. You know, it's just incredible to me that the things that have ended up becoming gone through the roof. I mean, here in Australia, I had a friend of mine who works for Mercedes. They are selling secondhand Mercedes more than first, in some cases, more than the price of a brand new one.
Oh no,
Because
that's the same here. But
it's crazy, right? Because
yeah, well,
people can't get the new cars.
A used car is more. They're more in demand than they are new cars, because new cars can't. They're all waiting for chips, so they're stuck in a park. You know, in a parking lot in the middle of Tennessee.
Supply chain issues.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's the people and the supply chain issues that are impacting construction at the moment. It's that's it. And despite that, things keep trucking on. Construction keeps growing. Property development's booming. It's all going ahead, full steam.
The biggest thing here I hear from a lot of people here is, the permitting process, whether you're doing signs or, is that an issue there as well? Other than, finding superintendents and PMs, whereas
I think that there's always the issues with, we call them councils here, like counties. So there's, each one has their own rules, and you've got to abide by all those rules. And then of course you overlay the state-based government rules for COVID, and then if there's any federal government rules, I'd say it's the mandating about what has to happen, vaccinations, proof of vaccination. One of the companies had its first person present a false COVID passport recently. So I'd say the council stuff, the permissions and all that, that's the usual nightmare. That's just part of the process. But the layer of the COVID, managing which men have been vaccinated and who can go on what site and where and what and who, all of that has been a massive undertaking. And then of course we have a percentage of the population that doesn't want to and won't get vaxxed, and the government is state-based, not federal, but the state-based governments are trying to do the carrot and stick to get people to do it. And I'm not really, obviously I don't want to talk about the pro-vax, no-vax, whatever, just the processes and the pressure that process is putting on business, from construction to hospitality, is outrageous. It's just crazy. And as businesses are reopening, you'd think you want it as easy as possible for them to run their businesses, but it's actually being made to be very difficult.
Now here, like I'm in Atlanta, Waffle House, okay? They're all over the place, all right? They're headquartered here in Atlanta. Waffle Houses here, they can't find people to, run the stores. So it's basically, you'll go by a Waffle House, but no one will be in there. You'll see people sitting there, but they're not at tables. They're just doing takeout or, pick up delivery.
Yeah.
And, or you'll see signs on the door. You'll go into, an Applebee's or whatever, and it'll say, hey, we're short staffed. Please don't yell at they're doing the best that they can. And, just be patient, and they, because the government, a lot of people are on the government dole. They don't want to work, and finding people to work is just, when I sold my house, we had our house cleaned every 2 weeks. So the cleaning crew that we had, they all quit on her, because between the government dole, food stamps, and the child credit and all this stuff, I mean, these people made all this money. But then our governor in Georgia, he cut that thing out. So they came back to get the job and said, hey, Anna, we want to come back to work for you. She's like, no, I'm not hiring you back. You made me work like a dog for the past 3 or 4 months while you were just sitting home taking in money. And I said, good for you. Good for you. Don't hire those people back. And I hate to say it like that, but it.
Oh no, it's definitely happening here as well. It definitely happened. the support during COVID was worth more than working. Then people were like, well, why would I'll just sit here and be locked down, or even if I'm not locked down, I'm just going to sit here because I'm still getting the check. So I think most of that here has started to be corrected, but what's happened is Australia relies on, we actually rely, because we're a growing country, we rely on immigration, and immigration has stopped. So immigration has stopped, and also the backpackers. The backpackers who come from Europe and the US, all over the world, Canada, everywhere, to come and travel Australia and work in restaurants, work in bars, work in pubs, work on farms, fruit picking or whatever it might be, as they travel around the country and see more of the country than most Australians have seen pre-COVID. Now it's a bit different because everyone's traveling locally, domestically, but those people are gone. They've gone home, and there's nobody coming. So in one part of the states, and I think I said this to you last time we spoke, but so one part of our state, little tropical end of the, if you think about the map of Australia, there's the pointy bit at the top, up there, very, very tropical, like rainforest tropical, amazing, amazing, amazing place. In one little tiny niche of that, one little community, they're looking for 1,200 people in hospitality. That's who's missing. Everyone from chefs to general managers to bar staff.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. It's a global issue.
My son just went to work for Boeing in Charleston, and his first week there. Anyway, he had to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning. He told me Boeing is looking for 9,000 people to work, and they're a military contractor, and he's working on C-17s, but he just said, you just can't go off the street and say, hey, you want to come work? They got to do background check and all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't just go and work. But 9,000 people, they have 142,000 employees. All right, but they're looking for 9,000 just in Charleston to work.
Wow.
And Charleston's a big town.
It's a beautiful place. I've been there. It's so beautiful.
I was like, 9,000 people with the mechanical or airframe background. Good luck.
Yeah. Where the heck are you going to find them? But anyway.
Yeah,
it's a crazy time, hey? It's been a crazy, crazy time. And unfortunately, in my mind, I don't know about you, David, but in my mind, I was like, oh, let's just get to 2022. It's going to be so much better.
With your strategic planning, you have 3 aspects that you like to, teach your clients or, mold your clients in that mold. Tell our audience what that is.
It's actually what people have been asking me. Obviously, I get asked a lot because I've grown businesses successfully. I didn't say before, I'm in the listed in the top 50 female entrepreneurs in Australia. I had the 11th fastest growing company at one point in the country. So and have had numerous successes like that. And so I often get asked, what's the key to growth? And particularly during COVID, I kept getting asked, how do we thrive through this thing? And I think we're coming out the other side of it, but it's not over yet, and the impacts of COVID are not over yet. They're going to be with us for the next few years. So it really is a time where you have to continue to focus, I think, on how to thrive in turbulent times. This is still a topsy-turvy world that we live in. We haven't, I don't think, yet settled on the new normal that people have been talking about for 18 months. When is the new normal coming? We'll see, but it's still all over the place, right? So it's important, I think, in terms of thriving in turbulent times and being able to have that resilient mindset to do that as a business owner in any sector, including construction, is those 3 keys I talk about. One is perspective. We have to deal with the short-term acute things that we have to handle due to COVID or not. In business, we're always handling short-term acute things, right? In construction, you're always handling short-term acute things. Something doesn't show up on time, something doesn't get done right. We're always dealing with that stuff. And COVID just added an intensity to that because of the huge amounts of uncertainty around it. So whilst we have to do those short-term acute things, what I tell people, what I want people to get is to keep a long-term perspective. business is a long game. It is a marathon, not a sprint. So you have to have a view of where you want the business to be in 2032. We're about to come into 2022. Who knows? Could still be a messy year. That's fine. But you'll get through that. You'll do the short-term acute things you got to take care of. But what you want to do is make those decisions inside a longer-term context. So you've got to have your eye on the prize. Where do you want to be in 2032, or at least 5 years from now? Because short-term is going to be all over the place. But where do you want to end up? Because when you're clear on where you want to end up, you'll make better decisions about those short-term acute things, because you'll be making them in context of landing there, not just going, oh my God, the sky is falling, I have to handle this thing right this second. So the long-term perspective. So number one is perspective, and specifically, people say to me, well, do you mean a positive mindset perspective? I do. You've got it. But what part of what gives you that is having a bigger picture view, having that brightness of the future, having something to live into a decade from now that keeps you going, that prize on the horizon that you go, okay, that's what we're going for. So based on what's going on now, what decision should I make? Because I'm present to this, not just what's right in front of me. That's really critical. The second thing is strategy. So once you figure out what you want by when you want to get there, so say 2032, you've then got to figure out your strategy. And most business owners in construction or otherwise are confused about strategy. They're too busy to stop and think about strategy. And strategy is, what is the fastest, easiest, most profitable way to get from A, where I am now, to B, where I want to be by that date? With the resources I have, what's the fastest, easiest way for me to get there? Well, that's this, this, and this. Most business owners are too busy to find the leverage points in their business, because they don't stop and do that strategic thinking. You have to stop and do the thinking. And that is where the real exponential growth is. It's actually doing that work that most people don't do or don't take the time to do. And I'll come back and tell you the biggest mistake I see people make over and over again in a minute. And the third thing is action. Well, people are like, well, what action? The right actions. The answer is the right actions. How do you know if it's the right action? Well, because it's in context for where you want to land. It makes sense given your strategy, and then you make the decision. Then you take that action. Otherwise, there are 5,000 different ways to get through COVID, no matter what type of business you're in. But the pathway through, the ones that made it, I think, in my experience, certainly my clients had that long-term perspective. They were clear on their strategy. COVID, no COVID, this is how we're going to play this thing. And therefore, these are the actions we need to take short-term to make sure we're in a great place. So yeah, perspective, strategy, and action are the three keys that I've seen in my own businesses, because I have about 8 different businesses, and in my clients' businesses that whether they're in construction or other areas, it really comes down to perspective, strategy, and action in terms of making sure you thrive during these crazy times. So that's that piece. The other piece I just said I'd talk about is the number one mistake I see people make is they determine their future based only on their past. So they'll say, oh, so let's say they're sitting down and thinking about what their budget could be for this year coming, or the following year, next couple of years, right? What's our budget going to be? In the construction companies that I work with, we're budgeted for the next 10 years. We know literally what our targets are for every year for the next 10 years. There's no if, buts, or maybes. All there is here's the plan by year, checking quarterly, monthly, and quarterly against actual. This is what we said we were going to do. This is what we actually did. Oh crap, we better make a correction because we didn't hit target, or we did, or we exceeded it. Oh great, we exceeded it, so we can slow back over here, and we're going to have to find some more people over here. So if you want to be a business of a significant size, you need to be planning at a 10-year rate. But the number one mistake people make is they'll say, let's say they're doing their budgets the next year or two. They'll say, oh, well, last year we did X in revenue and profit, and we grew by Y, 5%, 7%, whatever it is. Oh, well, based on that, we should be able to grow by 5 or 7%, or maybe 10. Maybe this year we grow by 10%. And so they set their budgets based on what they did last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. And so what ends up happening is business owners in every industry, I see it in construction constantly, end up with more of the same. I like to call it Groundhog Day. Same business, same but different, a little bit better. Nothing exponential happens. Nothing truly amazing happens when you are driving your future based on your past. Instead, what you want to do is be informed by that past, but driven by that future. So if that's the future we want, what do we have to hit this year? What do we have to do this year? And when you start thinking from that perspective, when you're working backwards from the future you're creating versus forwards from your current constraints and circumstances, that's when you start to get exponential growth. And most people don't know that. They think it's you work forwards. No, you work backwards. And in doing that, other possibilities open up. How could we do X, Y, and Z? Well, you think do this, do that, versus we just do more of the same over and over again. And that's why business owners, I think, burn out and get sick of it, because you have a basic lifestyle business that grows a little bit every year. That's not a growth-focused business. So if you want a growth-focused business, you've got to go the other way. Go out to the future you want and work backwards. So I hope that all makes sense.
No, totally to me. I'm an entrepreneur, so I mean, I've been on the roller coaster, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
I went through the dot-com bust. I went through 9/11. I went through 08, the economy falling off the cliff. And now I'm going through this. So
Yeah.
it's the COVID thing. That's probably the toughest thing. Is I'm a completely different business than I was last year.
Yes, that's right.
I was print, live events, now virtual and digital. So
yeah.
I mean, it's but I'm still kind of doing the same thing. It's just with a different format.
Yeah.
And
it's forced us all into lots of different ways of using technology that we would have avoided. So in a way, it's fast tracked us to a digital world. And I think the balance will kick back in, because what we're finding with our live events, Dave, and you might find it's the same once you get back into them, people are desperate to be with people. They are so sick of doing this stuff. As great as this is, they want to actually see people, have a beer with someone, have a meeting, have a chat, get to know someone outside of this format. So our live events, people are kind of already starting to queue up for events in February and March, because they're just hanging out to get back in a room with like-minded people. So I reckon your event in Scottsdale is going to go well.
Yeah, I was 50-50 on it, and my sponsor said, "Hey, come on, let's do it." And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to get some pictures with some people without masks on, put it in the magazine." Yeah. And then, kind of looking, I was thinking about bringing it back earlier this fall, but we had the Delta gig here, and so I was like, but next year, I wanted to bring back my cocktail parties every month. But as far as the other events, I think a lot of companies have found out that they don't need to spend 3 days at a trade show.
No.
The trade show will not be the same. It'll be shorter days. They'll be short. It's just
already changing.
Oh yeah. So I mean, will I bring my? Listen, if enough people say, "Hey, we want the summit to come back, my big event, we want that to come back in person." But then if everybody goes back and I'm the only one left in the virtual space, I might not like that. So go ahead, go back. This is my cocktail party. It's a 2-hour gig. We'll see you.
We'll see you. I think the cocktail party in the mix will make it perfect.
Yes, yeah. I do the northern states during the summer. Okay, and I do to go to warmer places in the winter. Because I don't want to go to New York in the middle of winter. It's freezing. So. Well, if there was one positive thought or phrase you want to leave our audience at Commercial Construction Coffee Talk, what would it be as we move into 2022?
I'd say that as much as this has been some people would say that the whole pandemic has been an age of loss, and not to diminish the losses that have happened in both businesses and lives. It's also been, as you've said, as you just demonstrated with your business, having completely transformed itself, it's also been an age of opportunity. It's been a moment in time of opportunity. Whenever you have such drastic changes in consumer behavior, B2C, and B2B. So the way businesses do business is different. Even the way government is doing business is different now. So whenever you have that level of social change, where people are doing everything from buying their groceries differently than they were pre-COVID, there are opportunities everywhere to make money. There are opportunities everywhere to grow business. And part of the being able to grow your business in the face of this stuff is having the nerve to do it based on your perspective, your strategy and action, just holding your ground. And I think there's opportunities galore, and construction is going to continue to boom. It's an exciting time to be in that industry, and just stay positive and hold your ground and push on. Growth is available.
Get her done.
Exactly.
The sun's going to come out tomorrow, and people are still going to be putting in drywall and screws, and
they are
mortar, grout, call it whatever you want. So
yeah.
Well, real pleasure speaking to you down in Australia. And if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they reach out to you if they wanted to, pick your brain, or so forth?
Oh, that would be great. They would go to my website, which is Ryll, RYLL Doyle, DOYLE.com. Then just go to the website. They can book a time through my EA there, etc. So just get in touch, and love to add value to anyone we possibly can.
If anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can catch me at davidc@ccr-mag.com. We're always looking for stories. We just had 2.8 million people hit our site last month, which was
congratulations.
Awesome. Well, I was hovering between 2.3 and 2.5. In the month of October, I hit 2.8 and change.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's been insane. So, and listen, some of those are robots, but not all of them. So it's been it's been just, I never had that many people, but
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I never bought one word for Google for SEO. I've done it all on content, and that's
awesome.
How we built it. And it's amazing. Like, I had my digital magazine for 15 years. I just neglected. I had it as, hey, it's here. If you're on the web or you're on the plane, you can see the magazine. But I had all this content, and now it's so
amazing.
when I went over 1.5 million or 1.5 million, when I hit over 2, I was like, God, I can't believe this. Then 2.5, and then I sent my stats to my editor last month. I go, yeah, look what we did, man. We went over 2.8 million people hit our site last month. He's like, I that's just insane,
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so it's
congrats.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But listen, if you have any stories out there, look, we find it. If you can't get the magazine, we get you on our vendor news page, news, Twitter, Instagram. We have them all. So send them to me. We look. You never know what's going to end up in ink, or digital ink, I should say, and we'll find a place for you. So with that said, Ryll, happy holidays down under, and
thank you to you all.
Yeah, and good luck in 2022, because it's going to be here in about 5 weeks. And if you ever get stateside, we'll meet in person, hopefully.
Oh, we'll definitely be back.
And Australia's on my to-do list, my bucket list, to go and see one of these days. And
you got to come. It's beautiful here.
Going through and doing the gig. And with that said,
thank you so much for having me.
So say goodbye from Australia.
Goodbye from Australia, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
And I'm going to say goodbye from just below the Beaufort Dam at Lake Lanier. And everybody, happy Thanksgiving, and have a great December coming up. And we will see you next time on another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. Ryll, we'll see you later.
Thank you.
You bet. See ya.